Welcome, everybody. This is Jason, and we're doing the third part of an introduction to SimPE. And I guess let's go ahead and dive right in. So, anyone, I think a couple of you were here last week. Julie, are you mic'd up? Can you tell us a little bit about the CTSS?
I'm not sure what the CTSS is.
Okay.
No,
Uh,
sorry.
Rachel, do you recall that one?
The CTSS, not particularly. I remember the the second one, and the third and the fourth. But
I know the second one, yeah.
Okay.
can you remind us what the CTSS is, Jason?
Yes. The CTSS it's a catalog string. It's it's different from the regular str text resource in that it only has two lines. The title that you would see in your BIMO catalog and the description. Those are the only two things on that resource.
So I know what that is. I just didn't know it was called the CTSS. That I'm just like, oh, catalog description thing.
Yeah, actually, I was going back looking through my old tutorials. I have a glossary of different resources. It's not 100% exhaustive, but it does contain a lot of those. I will drop that in the resource thread after the show. Okay, Julie, what's the SHPE?
That's another texture reference, isn't it, of some sort?
It's not exactly.
It's a 3D, like, it links the GMDC with the. It's like shape. It's the shape.
No,
That's what I.
it's above. It doesn't link the GMDC. It's above the GMND actually. So it doesn't touch the GMDC. It connects the GMND to the TXTR. So it's linking your geometric node to your material. The shape is the party coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that it links stuff.
Like, if you don't do it right.
Yeah, it responds only to the crests. The crest is the only thing above it in the hierarchy.
When you say it's true if you don't do it right, then when you do the GMD, not C, but the one that has the shape where you preview it, it won't show the texture, right? Is that
that's correct? But I mean,
okay?
if but there are multiple reasons for that. Either the SHPE can't see the TXTR, or the crest can't see the SHPE. Usually the first one. Okay. Let's hear Midnight Ice Queen. Do you remember what the OBJD does?
No, I do not. Sorry.
Okay. Anyone?
Isn't that like the object data where you can set like your GUID and your sort, catalog sort?
Yes, it controls. Well, it's OBJD is object data,
Yeah.
and it does catalog sort, room sort, the price, value of depreciation,
yeah.
and it contains the GID, the globally unique identity.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good stuff.
And finally, this one's for anyone. What is the GMDC?
The mesh.
Yes, it is the part that holds the mesh. So because we're looking at body shop resources today, we will be going over most of these components that are in the scene graph again, because they work a little bit differently. So I have in the resource thread, I have posted a mesh and a recolor for an object, or for clothes, and for an accessory, if in case you need to follow along. Those are the two things that I'll be using for this presentation. Okay, so moving along. We've got the GMDC, that's the geometric data container, is a part of the object that holds the mesh. What's a mesh? Have you ever seen a paper mache? Have you ever seen paper mache done with a wire skeleton or crepe paper glued over cardboard tubes to make a piñata? The mesh is just this. It's a 3D armature that you'll be gluing over your your texture and material over. Okay, so let's scoot back over to SimPE. Why do I have a second session open? Oh, because I was doing poses. Okay. And let's pop open the SimPE workshop. Okay, let's pop open the one that says Mesh, you smell like a beast, AM. And we click on, in the resource tree, we click on GMDC, and then we can see that there's only one here, so we click on that in the resource list, and let's hit that preview button. Okay, so the GMDC plugin is unique. In the default C geometric data container subtab, to the left, you've got the import, export, and preview buttons. These are all right here. So these allow you to extract the current mesh as an object and replace the current mesh or see what the mesh looks like. That's what we did with the preview. In the middle portion of the default tab, we've got this preview window for the model. That's this right here. And then the right portion holds the joint hierarchy. What makes body shape meshes distinct from object meshes is the animation skeleton and the method that you use to replace them. Okay, so as we can see, we remember last week we were just looking at I think it was just a regular old table, and it didn't have this joint hierarchy, right? So what happens, for example, when we click on right thigh here? We can see all of the vertices that are linked to the right thigh.
That looks so freaky.
When we click that in the joint hierarchy. Let's check. For example, left forearm. Yeah, okay, so interesting stuff. We can see what vertices are assigned to what joints by using the joint hierarchy. You can't edit them here. That's something that you would need to do in Milkshape. So the animation skeleton determines which vertices are assigned to which points in the armature. This can be as simple as gluing a hammer mesh to a Sim's right hand joint, or as complex as manually assigning individual vertices in a dress mesh. Each vertex has a weight. It can be assigned entirely to one joint or split between as many as 3 joints to create smoother animations. So going back to this, let's look at that right thigh again. Where'd it go? Right thigh. Okay, so you can see, let me blow that up a little bit. Come on. Let's make that a little bit bigger. You can see that, for example, the edge of the skirt or loincloth or whatever it is here is assigned pretty solidly to the right thigh. But as we move up and as we move more toward the edge, the line is a little bit blurrier. That's because the vertices, these vertices are assigned 100% to the right thigh. But as you move away from the right thigh, you want a smooth animation. You don't want it to look choppy when the sim moves its leg. So where it looks a little bit blurrier, this is split between right thigh and left thigh and probably pelvis. Let's look at pelvis. Yeah, see some of these meshes where it looks a little bit ragged around the edges here. that's because the assignment on this vertex is split between the right thigh and the pelvis. Yes? No? Did that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So when it's like has the like ragged / transparent edges, that means it is split among different joints.
Yes, it's assigned
Okay,
to
good to
multiple
know.
joints. So then, the other main difference about this is the way in which you replace the mesh. So we clone a new body shop mesh, and we don't use the import button because we're not importing a solid piece. We had to import the animation skeleton with the vertices already assigned to it. So to replace a jointed GMND or GMDC, you would first need to export the mesh from Milkshape or Blender as a 5GD. Then in SimPE, you would select the GMDC in the resource tree, right click, and select replace in the dropdown. So hop over here, replace, and then you would just find wherever you exported your your 5GD. Okay? So then another difference between by build objects and body shop files is that the body shop resources are split into the mesh and recolor components. So in this package, we only have the mesh components, the crest, the shape, the GMND, and the GMDC. The mesh file contains, the four that I mentioned, whereas the recolor is going to have the TXTR, the TXMT, an XML resource, which would be a GZPS for hair or clothing, an XSTN for skin tones, and an XMOL for accessories, and I believe for eye color too. That one's an XMOL. And a 3IDR resource that links the mesh by referencing the instance height and instance values of the shape and crest of the mesh package. We'll get to that in a bit. It will make more sense when we see the recolor package. The TXTR. Okay, so now let me reset that layout right quick. That puts, see what I did there, I just put the action pane back where it was. Okay, so now let's pop open YSLAB Black Bear AM. Now this one has two texture files because the mesh has two parts, body and body alpha. So body, yeah, just basic underwear looking stuff, and then the body alpha, this is where the loincloth overlays the skirt mesh. So the TXTR is a 2D image that gets applied to your mesh. The TXTR's plugin is fairly straightforward. The left 1/3 holds the TXTR's file name, DXT format, and levels of detail. The right 2/3 holds the actual image and has integration with DDS utilities. What do I mean by that? For the folks who weren't here, if you can import. This is a really archaic way of doing it, and it doesn't support alpha channels. Or you can build DXT. You do that using the DDS builder, select your texture, and you can increase or decrease the DXT here. And that's essentially a level of detail. DXT1 is lowest quality, does not support alpha channel, does not support bitmaps or normal maps. DXT3 is medium quality, supports alpha channels only, and DXT5 supports both alpha channels and normal maps and is highest quality. And then you've got the levels of detail. Levels of detail probably doesn't matter for body shop because it really only has one. It's always going to be 1024 by 1024, or in some cases like 512 by 512. Okay. The TXTR is at the bottom right of this, or at the bottom of the scene graph hierarchy, and it communicates with the TXMT via the TXMT's standard map base texture name property. If it isn't linked, the crest can't see the TXTR. The TXTR is one of the primary resources that new creators will edit, so you should be familiar with it. Normally, if you're replacing a texture, you're probably going to do that in Body Shop as opposed to SimPE, but you can do it via SimPE. The TXTR functions virtually the same in Body Shop files as it does in Build By mode. The only real difference is that it's bundled in the recolor package. So, what do I mean by that? Let's have a look at this scene graph. Okay, so that's interesting. So it's not linked to anything because it doesn't have a GMND to communicate with. The GMND is over in the mesh file, right? So we just have these two TXMTs and two TXTRs kind of floating in space. So then what gives? Well, before I answer that, the TXMT, we've already kind of covered this. The TXMT material definition is each subset or group's material. The TXTR tells the crest what to apply to the mesh, and the TXMT tells it how to apply it. The TXMT's job in an object is to say be shiny, be glowy, be opaque, etc. The TXMT has a plugin that looks similar to the GMND and crest. The default tab is content and the default subtab is properties, where all of the material's properties are listed in text form. You can also use the tab to add or remove properties. Okay, so what we mean by that, if we look at, say, body alpha. Okay, so it's actually, the properties tab is actually a lot simpler than if it were an object because it doesn't have environment cubes and all that. It's really straightforward. You know, you've got the basic, this is the name of the TXTR that this is linked to. Okay. And then the C material definition subtab contains the material's file name and informs what type of material to apply. Sim skin, sim standard material, etc. So this tab is a little bit interesting. It's different for Body Shop than it is for objects because instead of for objects, it's 100% of the time going to be standard material. But if you apply standard material to part of a Body Shop mesh, it's going to look weird. The alpha settings aren't right. It's funny. So you have to change that to sim standard material. But if it's applied directly on the sim skin, like the underwear covering the body, it looks like this. See, the body group for this recolor, it says sim skin. Okay. The file tab subtab references, the file list subtab references files that the standard material should pull from. Usually, in the case of Body Shop stuff, usually just a TXTR. Unless you want to make something super shiny, then you would enable an environment cube. And that looks like this. So see, all we've got is AM body grass skirt firewalker, which is the default thing that this was cloned from. Not a huge deal. And then categorize properties. The Categorize Properties tab displays the material's properties, but in graphical form, making it a bit simpler to understand and edit. So this probably isn't going to come into play very much for body shop resources. It's more of a thing for object resources. I was discussing with Marcus like how you would make something glow, or how you would, if something is not textured, how you would change the color of that material. But we're probably not going to mess with that very much. So within the scene graph hierarchy, the TXMT falls between the TXTR and the SHPE. The SHPE sees the TXMT via the parse tab, and if the link is broken, the crest won't display that. It won't display the material correctly. That's not strictly true with Body Shop, and the next resource we will go into that a bit. While not strictly necessary for new creators to know, the TXMT can apply materials in a lot of cool ways, so I would recommend learning a bit about it. So now we get down to business. The 3IDR, 3D referencing file, does for body shop files what the SHPE does for object files. It decides what material should be applied to which part of the mesh. There are three types of 3IDR: low range, high range, and collection. The low range correspond to the binks and coordinate with the file's custom icon and collection values. Then the high range correspond to the GZPS or XMOL and represent the life stage gender that the recolor is applied to. These 3IDR directly reference the mesh's crest and SHPE. The collection 3IDR determines how the recolor is applied. This can be via body shop or as an overlay or accessory. So here, the clothing one, we can see this one, it ends in 0, 1. So this corresponds to the binks. So essentially in clothing is super easy. This is the one that this is the 3IDR that you would link to the mesh. Okay, but to show you one that looks a little bit different, for example, an accessory, these have a lot of 3IDRs. Okay, so this low range one, this corresponds directly to the binks. So the one that ends in 0, 1, this is linked to the binks that ends in 0, 1, etc. Then let's sort that lowest to highest. So then after the ones that go from 0, 1 to 0A, then we have the ones that correspond to the life stage. The life stage is the one that links directly to, this is the one that will reference the mesh package's shape and crest. So here, this first resource node, the instance and instance high values, if you go back and double check the crest resource, they will correspond. And the same thing with the shape here. It's the first line, the instance and instance high values are what need to correspond to the crest and the shape. It's cool if you want to manually edit that way, but it can be a bit of a pain. This is why we have this other tool available to us. So we go to Tool, PJSE, Body Mesh Tool, Linking Stage. We can use this to link the 3IDR to the mesh that it's supposed to correspond to without having to enter it manually for each resource. Okay, and then this one with no data here is it's a collection resource. This, if it's visible in Body Shop, this collection resource, it's going to be what's the... Okay, that's the type. That's the... Yes, it's going to be empty. It's going to have no value. The only thing that corresponds is the instance of the collection corresponds to... No, it doesn't. That's odd. Oh, no, I'm wrong. So the instance value of the collection... Not seeing it. No, well, not important. In Body Shop, it doesn't really matter. Recently I've been working on converting a lot of these to from Body Shop accessories to accessory box accessories, and it's a little bit complicated, but the collection on those look a little bit different. Okay, so that's the 3IDR. 3IDR's plugin is just a set of TGI values for each resource referenced. The lines of text can be added, edited, or removed. Additionally, the package button allows you to drag any of the package's resources to the bottom of the list. So what do I mean by that? So let's go here to one of these that has the thumbnail image. So I can just delete this thumbnail image. I can move it up the list. I can move it down the list. Or I can click on this package button here. This lists all of the resources within the package. Say I want JPEG number 6. I can just grab that from the list here, drag it over, and it pops it onto this resource. But we don't need that, so we're just going to delete it. Okay. While not vital to new creators, understanding 3IDR is important if you work with clothes and accessory meshes. Moving on. The banks, probably not super important, but it does a couple of cool things. So we go banks in the resource tree, banks in the resource list, and the banks is an XML type resource that contains catalog and icon data. It can be edited to add custom body shop icons or move clothes, accessories back or forward in the sort order. It's fairly straightforward. There are only 7 editable properties. So, for example, if we want to add an icon, we would change... Not seeing it. Oh, the icon IDX, the first property here, we would just change that to 4 from 0. And then the other cool feature of the banks, if you've ever seen, for example, you're looking through the clothing catalog in Body Shop and you see a dress that's out of place. Why is that? Okay, it's because the sort index property in the banks is probably conflicting with another one. So you can edit the value in the banks to move the sort index value in the banks to move the article of clothing or the accessory forward or backward within the catalog. So moving on, the GZPS or XMOL. This is cool because it does a lot of different things. So we can see this one ends in 801. So we know that this is for, because it's an accessory, we know that this is for adult female only. The GZPS or XMOL are XML type resources. Via these resources, you can edit a lot of aspects of the recolor. The product value, that's this one here, the second one down, controls what custom icon, e.g. nightlife, university, H&M, is applied to the top right corner of the thumbnail in Body Shop or CAS. In conjunction with the family value, it can be used to BSOC, your clothes and accessories. So if you work with a lot of body shapes and you'll use BSOC, this is handy. Age. This sets the life stage of the outfit or the accessory. You can edit this value to change what ages the outfit will appear in. That is the third one down. Then, gender. This property can be edited to change the gender of the outfit is visible in. So here we're seeing gender 01, that's female. There are only two options here, 01 or 02. And then species, that's for if you want to enable it for pets. I believe a sim is 01, and then there are large dogs, small dogs, and cats. And then category. This controls what category an outfit or accessory appears in, e.g. casual, formal, outerwear. So this one, we're seeing the category in 1377. That is casual, outerwear, athletic, underwear, and swimwear, if I'm not mistaken. I do have a tutorial that I wrote prior to this. Here's product. Here's Sims, and I will attach this to the resource thread. Gender, flags. This I don't remember how I mentioned this one, but it determines if the outfit is visible in body shot. So, for example, if you add 01 to the end of flags, it would not appear in body shop. Disable for townie, so appears in body shop only. But if you add 8 and then you put a 1 on the end of it, it would also not appear in body shop. This is something that I've learned doing accessory box accessories. Where is category? Here it is. Okay, so all of these values are cumulative. So outerwear, that's 100. So we know that. Okay, so if it's 1377, it's going to be outerwear, gym clothes, maternity. How do I get the 77? Oh, underwear, formal, pajamas, and casual. Not available as a swimsuit. Okay. So now, additionally, num overrides. The num overrides value can be edited to set the number of groups in a recolor, and the lines below it can be added or removed to create new groups or remove unwanted groups. So let's hop back to SimPE. What I mean by this, if you go to num overrides, that's set at 02. This means there are two groups in this mesh. There are frame and lens. So if I wanted to add, say, rim, because some accessories have a third group called rim, I would just duplicate this, and duplicate this, and then change the values. It's an interesting technique. I might go into a workshop specifically about adding groups one of these days. That's the end of this presentation.